You are listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding. I'm a hoarder who needed an outlet to talk about this unusual and isolating mental illness. And because my hoarding is secret, I started this podcast to talk about it. Subscribe to the podcast and find my social media links, episode transcripts, and every link that I mention at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor, I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. Just a note before I hand over to this week's episode. The UK is a bit of a scary place to be these last couple of weeks. In short, one person did a really, really awful thing, and now entire communities are being scapegoated and blamed for that. So this podcast is all about me being really vulnerable. I know there are a lot of listeners out there who are feeling vulnerable because of everything that's going on, and I just want to send love and support, especially to Black and brown listeners of the podcast in the UK, Muslims in the UK, refugees and migrants in the UK. I don't know how this will all ultimately resolve, but I am sending love and I hope you are able to stay safe. I am here with Dr Jan Eppingstall. She is a counsellor in Melbourne, Australia, and she specialises in working with people who hoard. She is a regular and valued guest on the podcast. Jan, how are you?
Excellent, thank you. And thank you for your kind words. Happy to be here.
So the first time I invited Jan onto the podcast, it was because I had signed up to her email list and she'd sent out a newsletter about trauma that blew my mind and made me wonder if she'd been listening into my therapy sessions.
Yes, yes, I was.
Before we even knew each other, that was many, many episodes ago. But today we're talking about another topic based on one of Jan's emails. And in this email, she said, I often suggest to clients with clutter at dangerous levels that they might find it beneficial to put a moratorium, embargo, or ban on feelings of shame and guilt that arise when they consider throwing things away that are still good or could be useful to someone or are not ready for the trash. She went on to say, recognizing that your health and well-being is more important than saving stuff from landfill isn't selfish or wrong, it's necessary for your survival. So today we're talking about this idea of declaring an amnesty on all those feelings and potential regrets we might have about discarding stuff and doing it anyway. So, Jan, what made you address this topic in your email in the first place?
It was something that I was experiencing when I was working hands-on with people all the time, just continuing to come up. Working with people who had limited capacity to manage their homes and possessions and that are extremely unwell, they would pontificate about items that were broken or food that was out of date because they just had such overwhelming feelings of guilt around being wasteful. And often they felt like they were failures because they'd wasted money, even if it was years and years ago. So, they recognised on a level, that they didn't have the energy to cook a meal out of that out-of-date food or have access to the tools to fix whatever broken item they'd saved, let alone the space kind of to do the task. But they still felt stuck with that guilt just sitting on their chests pretty much. And I kind of hoped that reading the newsletter would give people the permission to put those feelings aside for a time so that they may kind of get back to a place where they can honour their values around frugality and scrupulosity, which is just a fancy name for avoidance of waste. I was hoping that they could set it aside and then come back to what was important to them once they were out of danger, basically, because often it's at dangerous levels. Clutter and disorganisation is at dangerous levels. Something needs to shift. And that was kind of where the newsletter came from.
Let's talk about the thinking behind your reasoning for the idea of an amnesty or a guilt-free zone or a no judgment zone around discarding guilt. Talk about that.
Yeah. So over the years, this is the most ingrained reason for saving items that I've found. And most of the items I notice have little use without some energy expenditure. There's always some action that needs to be taken, either to recycle it, in just the right way, or repair it in just the right way, or find just the right person. So that's the thing that leads to churn, which is just really moving items from one pile, considering it, picking something up, considering it, and then putting it on another pile, because it's going to remain in the home, but I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I don't know where it should go. So let's do a little thought experiment. Okay. So imagine we come across a short piece of used ribbon. We can't remember where it came from, but we're in the habit of reusing wrapping paper and ribbons and stuff like that. So we decide to keep it. We don't have a home for ribbon right now, so we put it on a pile near our stationery type stuff. Now imagine needing ribbon for a present in 4 months' time. So what are the steps we need to take to use this particular piece of ribbon? First, we'd need to find it in our current organisational state, wherever we might be. How easy will it be to find this piece of used ribbon when we need it? Knowing we're usually running late and forget about wrapping until the last minute just before we're about to leave. And how long will it take to find it?
And will it need not necessarily cleaning, but is there stuff on it from sitting in a pile, or from when it was first wrapped? Is there still sellotape on it?
You're spot on. If we find it, do we have a flat surface to wrap the damn gift on? And do we have to do something to the ribbon to straighten it or clean it or take the sticky tape off? Bingo. And how likely are we to need that exact length of ribbon?
It will be too short. If you can find it, it will be too short.
It will be too short. So what is more likely to happen? We do all of this, or are we more likely to go out and buy new ribbon along with other items we don't need right now that are on sale?
And also, something I've observed in myself is that if I know I have a thing and I can't find the thing, that creates that really panicky scarcity feeling that means I then buy 5 ribbons when I need one, because I'm trying to soothe my scarcity panic. Whereas if I haven't had that scrambling around trying to find a thing, that real needy scarcity thing doesn't kick in so much.
Oh, that is amazing insight, because that's exactly I've then gone to, use brand new ribbon that we bought in bulk when it was on sale at whatever craft store, because we felt that scarcity sense when we couldn't find our other ribbons. Exactly. Probably the other thing we might do is not use ribbon at all. I just wrap it in, and then panic and then go off and shop for a lot of ribbon. Or not bother to wrap the present and just put it in a gift bag.
Or another is, but if I use this ribbon on this, then I won't have it. So I better not use it, because then I won't have it anymore.
And it's too good, or it's the perfect colour, or it's beautiful, and I actually bought it really because I wanted it. I just wanted it. Exactly. So, this could be anything we feel compelled to save because of those rules we believe to be important. use wrapping paper, spices in the back of the cupboard, that weird grain we bought for a salad. For a salad we made once 5 years ago, which I will put my hand up and say I probably still have that in the cupboard. But as I mentioned, many of my clients just need permission from from an independent, non-judgmental person they trust to kind of lead them to the conclusion that this is, that this perfect scenario or this best case scenario won't happen 99.9% of the time. There'll be that one time where you found the ribbon that was exactly the right colour and exactly the right length, and you just stuck your hand into a pile and pulled it out. But that's really, the rare.
It's very much the exception, isn't it?
Exception to the rule. And that saving this little piece of ribbon isn't moving us forward. And the guilt and shame about wastefulness pales kind of in comparison to how much guilt and shame we'll have when we can't invite people round or do the things that we love. And I guess the one thing that often comes up, I think, underlying this is that keeping this isn't making people a better person because they're avoiding waste. I mean, the waste already happened when we bought something that we didn't need, or when we accepted someone else's cast-offs without kind of having a plan to use it. We're just guardians of the waste that will kind of, hate to say it, end up in landfill when we're no longer here.
And will suffocate us while we are here.
Definitely. But overall, it's kind of a way to bring awareness to what our unspoken rules are around saving as well. It's a technique that kind of brings the bigger picture into focus as we make decisions about the individual items, which is something that's particularly hard for people who hoard, that changing of the attentional focus from the big picture, and then you go to the micro, and the micro becomes the focus. Like I've seen, people spend half an hour cleaning an object that's broken. That sort of thing is really, it's very hard to snap out of that once you're focused on it. So this is a way to kind of step back a little bit and think about those bigger picture issues.
We talked once, I think it wasn't on the podcast, I think it was, not that we gossip before and after or anything.
We're thinking about creating a second podcast of just us gossiping people. So if you want to vote for that.
But I remember telling you about the ridiculous, I was aware it was ridiculous, but the lengths I was going to wash a dress so that a stain would come out of it so that I could donate it. It wasn't even so that I could wear it. It was that, and I was trying all these different creams and powders and just nothing. And it was, I knew I was being ridiculous, but I just couldn't.
You just couldn't let it go. And you were probably on the internet Googling, what can I use on this particular type of stain? And then watching videos of, there's people out there. Look, I don't do it, I promise. I actually do it all the time. Watch people get cleaning stains off dresses, because it's kind of really, it's just, what's the word? It's just really satisfying. To watch someone take a dress that looks, so stained from someone's 1950s wedding dress, and they make it look beautiful. And then I watch what she does and I think, really? Oh, no. No. Did you, in the end, donate it?
Yes, I think like my fourth product finally got the stain out, and I hope somebody's wearing it, but I'm not sure it was worth all of that effort and all of those
time, money. Exactly.
So I think one of the reasons the message in the email inspired me rather than alarmed me was that this was a contained amnesty. It wasn't forever. It was until things were improved. So what's the thinking behind this guilt-free zone lasting for a limited period of time?
So for many of us, scrupulosity or avoidance of waste is like a core value. So we feel like it's part of who we are. If I were to say to clients, don't think twice about tossing stuff you don't need, in fact, your guilt is wrong, they'll never listen. And I'd be disingenuous because I do it myself. I constantly am thinking the same things as you, just not on the same volume. The limited time means that you are going to honour your values and take action towards them again very soon. But right now, some things need to be put aside so that you can live according to this value in the future. I think that's really cool for people to understand that you're not tossing aside that value. It's just being put aside momentarily until you can get back some of the control. I think it's important to contemplate as well that we don't have a single value we live by. We have lots and lots of others. If those are things like family, fun, joy, perhaps our avoidance of waste is stopping us from living a more rounded life because we can't have our grandkids or nieces and nephews over for parties because we've saved all the ribbons off every present we've ever received. If by putting this one value of scrupulosity on hold for a period of time, we can experience more joy and fun with our family in the future, then are we really missing out? Are we really, losing part of ourselves? We can always come back to it. And when we do, we'll have a better grasp of, what we need and what we want in our lives. Because if we just keep avoiding and avoiding and avoiding, it's the ogre. It's the scary monster under the bed. We've got to kind of turn towards that, I think.
Yeah, and I think putting that limit on it helps, as you said, it helps it feel less out of control. But I think also, for me, something I find useful to tell myself is that I can allow myself to put these values aside, as you were saying, now, in order to create the conditions where in the future I can recycle everything perfectly and I can not wreck stuff and I can live the kind of life with the kind of values I want to, but I can't do that then unless I do this now.
I could not have said it more succinctly and more divinely than that. That is exactly the core sentiment of this idea.
That's me. Divine.
Brilliant. Divine. Exactly. Because that's part of, we're trying to be perfect and recycle perfectly and do all these perfect things, but we just haven't got the ability right now. We will one day be the smug, person with the perfect recycling bin and the perfect green bin. But right now, that perfection's getting in the way of perfection.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So let's talk timescales, because you're not talking about doing it for a month or doing it for 6 months so much as doing it until your home is in a better state. I hope you're finding this episode interesting. In order to help me continue bringing you content like this week after week, your support is crucial. This independent podcast wouldn't be possible without listeners like you. I pour my heart and soul into it, and I fund the podcast myself, from microphones to computer software to hosting costs. So I'm asking for your help if you can. Whether you can offer a one-off donation or you want to become a de-hoarding darling with a monthly contribution, any amount makes a huge difference. Find out more at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/donate. So you talk about this kind of lifting of your usual rules until a home is, and you make 3 kind of categorizations: safe, comfortable, and equilibrium. is reached. I think we probably understand safe and comfortable, but could you talk a bit about household equilibrium?
Okay, this is something I kind of made up.
Coined. Say that. That sounds more impressive.
I coined. This is a term that I've coined. So household equilibrium is reached when you have a loose grasp of what you own, where it is, and therefore what you need to acquire to live the life you want. Now, loose grasp, I really mean loose. I just mean knowing that you've got those things there. When it comes winter, you've got blankets and, duvets that you need, all that sort of stuff. You know roughly where that is, and you can locate it. And you can also get access to it because it's safe to move through rooms, etc. At this point, you've let go of what you don't need or want, leaving really what is essential for you. Now, this concept is a bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears because it's a level of stuff that's just right for you and your family. No one else can really tell you what that is. And for me, it's the state where you can kind of lay your hands on something you need quickly.
Yeah.
And lots of objects aren't getting in the way of that. Some people really like to be very efficient and have the most used things at, easy reach, grab it and go, have no doors on things, have everything. Other people, that's not so much of a priority. It's however you would like to live that allows you to live according to your values. Some of us find extras make us feel safe. So, we might feel comfortable that if the worst were to happen, we would be okay. This might be 356 T-shirts for you, but for me, it's 10. So it's not my place to judge what level of stuff makes you feel safe. I don't have the same lived experience as you. You may have been through times when you couldn't wash your clothes. You may feel more comfortable with possessions surrounding you. I'm not here to say that that isn't right or okay. All I want you to be is physically safe from health and safety hazards in your home and have everything you need and the kind of room for new things to enter your life as well. I think that's really important, that there's an opportunity for you to pick up new hobbies and to freely let go of things that maybe no longer interest you or suit you without having that guilty feeling of, I'm giving up on something that I used to love. But we all change. We all evolve into new people, and we may no longer be a knitter and we might be a scrapbooker now or whatever it is, but we need to not feel guilty and want to keep all of that, which will hold us back from joy and fun in the future.
So if we're giving ourselves an amnesty on the rules that we've developed that avoid any waste or whatever that looks like for you, what kind of rules or guidelines might you replace that with if you're declaring this amnesty? What might a person's rules be?
Well, yeah. If you live alone, this sort of thought technique can be quite easily used. You have some boundaries around it. The amnesty is over, as we said earlier, where everything's safe, comfortable, and you've got that equilibrium, you know roughly where it is, etc. And in order for it to work really well, there needs to be a suspension of any incoming discretionary impulse items until that amnesty is over. If we can stop bringing new items in, it allows us to assess what we have and makes this process much easier. Anything that, now some people, this will be shock horror, anything that is not yours to throw away, grown kids' belongings, exes stuff, etc. The new rule is contact the owner and ask them to come and collect them. And they have 1 month, or they have 1 week, or they have a day, I don't know, or they will be thrown away. And ask for permission to throw them away. I think sometimes we are the guardians of everybody else's kind of forgotten stuff. I'm not saying it's rubbish, but often it is things that others have forgotten.
Yeah.
And we have taken on their responsibility. We've taken up the mantle and said, oh, yes, I must preserve this. We don't actually know why. We just know that someone else left it here, which means it must now, come into the fold where we, we protect it like it's a prize. If you have, grown children and they say they don't want their old artwork from grade 1 or the trophies that they got, in primary school, you must honour their wishes and let them go. I think we often kind of blame our kids for not taking their stuff with them, but deep down we don't want them to, we don't want them to let go of them. And we don't want to let go of our children, we don't want them to grow up. They're moving on and we need to as well. Those trophies, 90% of them are plastic and, really.
And you don't remember winning them and...
No, exactly. Look, I'm not saying that if you're an Olympian, you toss out the gold medal. I'm not being ridiculous like that, but something from the egg and spoon race from prep.
We had egg and spoon races.
Maybe that actually would be really cute, but I don't know. And the other thing I also think is important to kind of take into consideration that keepsakes as a mother or father are okay, but they need to be about your memories of being a parent. I kept one of each of my son's favourite books and 1 or 2 baby toys and photos and things. What I found really interesting was what I kept 10 years ago. Not all of it is important now. And some of the things when I went back and revisited the keepsakes, I kind of go, don't remember that. Don't know who that belonged to. Why did I put that in there? That's weird. So, and going back and revisiting them, it can be wonderful, if you do it with your loved ones, do it with your partner or, grandparents of the children, or think about those who are no longer with us as you look through them. It's kind of a nice way to remember times in your life. But if you live with others and you're the person who hoards, there's additional guidelines really, I think, that might help to avoid conflict as much as possible. So firstly, it's making an agreement that anything that's worth less than X dollars, and I don't know what that would be for you, $5, $20, can be thrown out without consultation. If you know your family member values a particular type of item, though, discuss that first so there's no misunderstandings, because they might collect bottle tops or something. There might be something that's really important that's of no clear monetary value, but there's a high level of attachment to it. So we need to remember that. Any items above X must be owned by you to be thrown out by you. And children can make decisions about what to let go of from their rooms. I mean, again, of course, you wouldn't let them throw out grandma's wedding ring or childhood photo albums, but respect their wishes. That's a really big one. When a client is able to honour a child's decisions, I know that a switch has been flipped and they're now thinking more about the life they want to live rather than focusing in on the stuff. And that really is a turning point for a lot of people. Oh, okay, right. Now I'm going to let him or her or them deal with that, their own space,
Yeah, if they say they don't play with this toy anymore and they have no desire to sleep with that teddy anymore, and especially if you've given them that decision to make, it's then really confusing for them if you override that and say, oh no, you've got to keep that toy you never play with because it means something to me. It gives them a really confusing idea of boundaries and their their autonomy to make decisions, and all of that must be immensely confusing.
Exactly. And when there's that, oh, oh, no, 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 no. I spent all this money on those things. Then we twist the values, and the child thinks, well, money matters and things matter more than I do.
Yeah.
I thought I was important, but now it seems these other things are more important than me. And at certain ages, I do find kids are very attached to things up until about sort of, and this is anecdotal, I haven't really looked into the research, I'm sure it's there though, up until about sort of 10, 11, they want to keep everything they've made. And then after that, it drops off so sharply. So I used to sit there and sort of go, oh, here's all your beautiful pictures that you've made at school. Most of them were just, one
Splodge.
splodge. Some of them were, come on. Really, you were told to draw that, weren't you? You just got the red and went splodge. So, 1 out of 3. Let's keep 1 out of 3. And then, later on, of course, the majority of those left the building. But I also used a lot of them for wrapping up presents and stuff, because there's a lot of butcher's paper and a lot of splodges of colour, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, and family members love that.
Of course.
It's just about letting that not become rarefied, as we often do, don't we? We kind of go, oh, that was so special. It was this. And half the time it was an accident that it was so good. I'm sorry to say. I really am sorry to say. It was a pure accident. Communal property in the home has to be agreed upon by adult members of the household, because that is, kids can't just decide to throw out large pieces of furniture and stuff unless it's unsafe or it's blocking something or whatever. And no items that are tossed out are to be rescued by other family members.
That's a big one.
Decision is final.
Because ultimately what we're talking about is when we hear that voice going, such and such would like that, or a charity shop could get £10 for that, or if I go to that special tip that takes that very specific recycling, I could get this recycled, but that will be a while because it's 20 miles away. And we're talking about that degree of letting go of that degree of controlling the outcome, aren't we?
Yes.
That just sometimes saying, maybe the charity shop could sell it for £10, but it's more important that it goes now.
Exactly. It's putting that, your well-being and your health right in this moment, ahead of the perfect disposal or passing on of that object, because we can get very, very tied up in the perfection of that, and the results or the outcomes of being that perfectionistic are not that good. Okay, yes, that they may have been able to sell it for £10, or they might have just put it in the tip. Just not even, it probably wouldn't have even got inside the door. That sort of thing. If we need stuff to move out of the home in a reasonably fast pace because we want to get on with living our lives, sometimes we do have to lower our expectations on how well we'll dispose of things.
Don't give it to the perfect charity shop, give it to the nearest charity shop.
Beautiful.
Don't list it all on eBay. List the one thing that's worth more than £100 on eBay, the rest can go.
Yeah.
Don't put things to this to one side for them and this to one side for them. If it's going to go, it's going to go.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, in all honesty, is the idea, secretly, to train us to let go of the guilt on a long-term basis by suggesting it as a short-term thing first? Or is it genuinely focused on having these reduced rules for a short time?
You caught me. You caught me out. It's really exposure to letting go in a safe way. Like whatever we think we can't handle, we can become able through those small exposures. Right? I feel, as I said earlier, I feel the same guilt, perhaps not as acutely as, my clients or listeners. However, exposing myself to letting go of things I thought, that I thought I'd regret when I was going to pass it on has just not happened. Like it's just not come to fruition. I think the research does say that the sting of discarding guilt subsides after about 7 minutes.
I've had the odd occasion of still feeling it, like,
Yes.
I messed up there. But on the balance of number of times that's happened versus number of times it hasn't happened, it's swallowed up by the number of times it hasn't happened.
Yes, exactly. And being unable to see the items as well, like to be reminded of them is another good strategy, like the black plastic bag or the box with, that you cover, because we will falter if we keep looking at it again, because it is, I think we've talked about it before, it's exposure effect. If we see it, then we, have strong feelings about it. We want to bring it back into our homes. But yeah, the little exposures will hopefully lead you to experience, which will then allow you to say, I've done this before and I don't regret letting go of all the cardboard boxes or, whatever it might be. I am actually tricking you, but, it's for your own good.
It is, and it's not like training people to become reckless citizens who don't care about anything. It's about that word that comes up every time, proportionality.
Exactly. That's exactly right, because you will get back to that place.
Yeah, people aren't going to do this and come out not caring about the environment or not caring about landfill or not caring about money or any of those things. It's proving to yourself that there are sometimes difficult decisions and you do your best with them, and terrible things don't happen.
It's not a catastrophe if that little tiny piece of ribbon that could be made into a Barbie necklace or something, and I'm not exaggerating there.
Oh, I believe you.
Yeah. That really the world is not going to stop spinning. And I think we do feel like that often when it's, particularly when we're doing this a lot, when we have a lot of stuff to work through, we do have to kind of look at, some self-care there. If we push ourselves too far, then we start to really find it a chore. Then we don't want to go back to doing it. We want to finish on a high. We want to finish feeling good about it, because good vibes, good feelings lead to, action.
As somebody who this kind of approach would no doubt benefit, but who is always hesitant to do kind of throw yourself all in kind of approaches, is there a low-key version of this that people can test out, or does it really have to be committed to in full?
I think there's ways. I think even putting something in the bin that could be recycled can kind of loosen up that perfectionism, because that's what this is all about. I mean, I had someone say to me once, it's okay, you don't have to put your hand back into the bin to pull out the thing you've accidentally put in the rubbish that should be recycled. And I kind of went, you're right,
Yeah.
I don't think the world is going to end. So that's another little, just a tiny way you could try it. I mean, our fear of being wrong is triggered when we try to make decisions about discarding. That's what this is all central to it. I think you can also pick low risk categories. I've talked about like wrapping paper, cardboard boxes, glass jars. Start there and allow yourself to recycle those as soon as they arrive in the home. Doing things as they come in so that they don't remain. Open your mail over the recycling bin outside so you don't have to make the decision about saving junk mail later. These little things are ways to kind of allow you to do that in a much less risky kind of environment. Look around and see what you might be able to tolerate and work on that. It might be newspapers or out-of-date cosmetics or something, or low-hanging fruit first, right?
That's really interesting, because now you speak about it, I do that with out-of-date food. Out-of-date food goes, full stop.
Yeah.
And I allow myself to feel like, oh, that's a waste.
Yes.
But it doesn't stop me doing it, because that's core to me. I'm not eating out-of-date food. I deserve better than out-of-date food. And I'm emetophobic, so just, I don't eat out-of-date food.
Exactly. I just cannot be, eating out-of-date food. And I think that is one that a lot of people will struggle. A lot of people will want to keep it and think, oh, if I use it tonight, and they never do. And I think that's just only compounding that sort of sense of wastefulness.
Yeah, once I recognised that there was some bits of out-of-date food I was keeping, knowing I would never eat it, but just because I really didn't want to face the fact that I had wasted that money or wasted that food. And I was like, once I became aware of, like, I know I'm not going to eat this. I know that for sure. I'm keeping it because I feel bad at having made a mistake 2 years ago. And so, so with out-of-date food, I can feel like, oh, this is a shame, but I have no hesitation at getting rid of it.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering if what I need to do as somebody who's more of a toes in the water first person is think categories, like you said, because my reason for being more toes in the water is that I have much experience of all-in type things, and I blast them for a while and then burn out and never touch it again. And that's why I've learned that I'm just better at more gradual ins and outs.
Yep.
But I'm thinking now I need to think of my next category like food, where there's just a line where there's no compromise, and it goes, and it doesn't matter how it goes or how imperfectly it goes, it just goes.
Yeah. And that is one of the ones that a lot of my clients find pretty easy, because, again, they don't, they're not wanting to get sick. It's important, for them to eat well. And there's a date on the packet, and for me, the same with cosmetics and body products and stuff like that. Nowadays, everything is, there's not as many preservatives in things. So things go off. And I'm not going to put something horribly out of date on
your
skin.
eyes.
On your eyes. Exactly. Like I told a client the other day, I said, oh, you realise that mascara, you should replace it, every 4 to 6 weeks, because it's going on your eyes and then it's going back and the air is entering. Well, I blew her tiny mind. She's like, I've got stuff there that I get. Just, and if it smells when you open, you open the cap of some body lotion or whatever and it smells, just don't risk it. And don't keep things for good. Use the Chanel body wash or the, whatever that you got for your 50th birthday. I'm not talking about anyone in particular, me.
Of course.
Use it during the week, just to feel, a bit special. I think it's important to use this stuff because it's so much more disappointing when it's ruined and you go, oh my God, because you open it, once you've cracked it, a lot of these things have 12 months, 6 months date on them.
It was a little while ago, I broke 2 mugs in quick succession. And one of the mugs was like one of my use it daily, love this mugs. And the other was one that I really liked but never used. And I found that with the one I used all the time, you would think I would be more upset at breaking that one. But actually I was like, you have served me really well. I have really appreciated you. I'm very familiar with you. You've been lovely, but it's fine. But the one I'd barely used, I was like, that's such a waste. I've never even, and that took me, I would have expected it to be the other way around. But when you don't use things, why have them? Why have them?
Yeah, why have that beautiful pair of shoes if you don't wear them with your party dress up to the shops for a coffee? I think the other thing a lot of people that I work with, I kind of try to encourage them to do is to use those things that they've kind of kept. One client, she wears a different, in summertime, she wears a different dress. Her and her friend comes over and they go out for coffee, and they wear they both wear a different dress each Thursday, and so she wears all of the clothes she's got. Yes, she has a lot of clothes, but she's enjoying them now, and as you say, if it served you well, you can thank it. You can, loved you forever mug, you were the best mug I've ever had. Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make as well. Use these things.
So, Jan, if people want to find you online, and in particular sign up for your emails, which inspire things like this episode, where can they do so?
Well, they could pop on over to stuffology.com.au on my website. You can sign up for the weekly free newsletter. If you want to check out my stuff on Instagram, my handle is @stuff_ology, and it's the same for X, although I'm just not posting much on X. I can't do it automatically for my newsletter, and so it's just I've really lost the plot with that. And Facebook, my handle's @Stuffology Consulting, but you can always drop me a line, jan@stuffology.com.au.
And I think I say this every month, but I cannot recommend the email newsletter enough. It is always informative, sometimes spooky. How does she know?
Oh, yes. Did you, what? Have you been listening to me?
Yeah.
How did you know that's what I think in my head every day? I can read minds.
It's true. So thank you, Jan. That's, as always, been, what is it the BBC's meant to do? Inform, educate and entertain. I feel that has been informative, educational and entertaining.
And I thank you very much for inviting me yet again.
May we take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record and listen to this podcast today. I am speaking on the lands of the Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I acknowledge their connection to country, both land and sea, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening today.
To get a bit extra, you can become a de-hoarding darling. Hear answers from interviewees and me to extra questions, get suggestions and recommendations, and get a Spotify playlist to de-hoard to. You can also feel warm and glowy in the knowledge that you're helping to support the podcast. Find out everything you need to know at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. That's overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/darling. So shout out this week to the Paring Down podcast. I will link to the Paring Down podcast in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Have a listen to what guest Elena has to say about setting a timer. Have a listen.
Gamify the timer because it tells your brain this won't go on forever. I think when we start something that we don't want to do and we think, well, this is never going to end. There's a defeat we already feel, but it's like when you're in a workout class and they're like, okay, 5 more reps. You're like, I can do 5 more reps. Like this isn't I'm not going to have to do this for the next 2 hours. So when you see on your timer, oh my gosh, I only have 7 more minutes of this, it gives a sense of urgency and you get going quickly and your brain knows I'm not doing this forever. And I believe that's very calming at the end of the day.
I think that's pretty sound logic, isn't it? When we see the end in sight, we can often push that little bit harder. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to That Hoarder Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. You can find all the links I've mentioned and a transcript of the episode online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support and do subscribe to the podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes. There may be links in this podcast that earn me money. This doesn't come at any extra cost to you if you make a purchase through those links, and it helps to support the podcast.